This is Barry Zalma on insurance. Today I'd like to speak about some of the weapons available to insurers to defeat insurance fraud. The first of which is, of course, the Special Investigative Unit. California, Washington, New Jersey, and Florida are among many states that require by law each insurer to have a Special Investigative Unit, an SIU, in place and operational. SIUs help identify and investigate suspicious claims, although some insurance companies outsource this work to other insurers and investigative agencies. An SIU may be a small team whose primary role is to train claims representatives to deal with the more routine kinds of fraud cases, or may consist of teams of trained investigators, including former law enforcement officers, attorneys, accountants, and claim experts who work together to investigate fraudulent activities thoroughly. More complex cases involving large-scale criminal operations or individuals who repeatedly stage accidents may be turned over to the National Insurance Crime Bureau to assist the SIU. In some cases, the SIU has grown to be a multifaceted organization whose duties are not limited to the investigation of fraudulent claims. Depending on the way it is organized, the SIUs work as an integral part of an anti-fraud program would include at least the following. 1. Investigation of potentially fraudulent claims. 2. Education of claims and underwriting personnel about how to recognize potential or attempted fraud. 3. Education of the public about how insurance fraud affects the average insurance buyer. And 4, liaison with fraud division, police, and prosecutorial agencies who are willing to deal with insurance fraud as a crime. Because California's requirements for SIUs are typical of most anti-fraud programs, they are quoted and will be quoted in detail. 1. The SIU shall provide ongoing fraud education and training to the insurer's personnel who have responsibilities which are integral to the insurer's corporate anti-fraud strategy, and training shall include, but is not limited to, claims handlers. 2. The SIU shall provide ongoing fraud education and training to the insurer's employees who are the insurer's integral anti-fraud personnel, which is sufficient to enable such personnel to provide the SIU with appropriate information that is adequate to execute the SIU's anti-fraud functions. The SIU shall establish written procedures to be followed by the insurer's anti-fraud personnel. 4. The SIU shall establish training for SIU employees, which will enable the employees to effectively analyze claims information, pursue appropriate investigations, conduct appropriate and effective interviews, use available database resources, provide comprehensive and appropriate support to the insurer's anti-fraud personnel, and work cooperatively with law enforcement agencies. The complete set of the SIU regulations and the analysis of those regulations is available in my book, The California SIU Regulations, which is available as a Kindle book or a paperback from Amazon.com. The objectives of the SIUs can be stated as follows, quote, "The purpose of a special investigative unit is to assure the effective implementation of the Insurance Fraud Prevention Act, or to detect and investigate on behalf of the insurer suspected fraudulent claims by insureds or persons making claims for services or repairs against policies held by insureds, and to deter insurance fraud and thereby reduce insurance costs. The SIU shall organize the elements of the insurer's integrated corporate anti-fraud strategy. The SIU shall cooperate with the insurer's claims handlers who are trained in fraud detection, as well as the insurer's legal personnel, technical support personnel, and database support personnel." This is California's Code of Regulations, Section 2698.42. Insurance company surveys confirm that SIUs have a dramatic impact on the bottom line of many insurance companies. According to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the NICB, the administrator of the International Association of Special Investigation Units, the IASIU, say that although the results may vary from company to company, on average, SIUs save $10 for every dollar an insurer invests in its SIU. As indicated, some statutes require that SIU investigators train members of the insurance claims department to recognize insurance fraud. Variations of these regulations are being adopted across the country as insurance departments find they cannot fight fraud on their own. California regulations are informative to adjusters in any state and can be reviewed at www.insurance.ca.gov. In addition to special investigative units, states are now establishing fraud divisions. That is, fraud divisions or fraud bureaus set up in the departments of insurance to work only on insurance fraud cases. In 47 of the 50 states, the insurance industry pays money into a special fund, creating a fraud division within the State Department of Insurance. The California Fraud Division, for example, states that its purpose is, quote, "to protect the public from economic loss and distress by actively investigating and arresting those who commit insurance fraud, and to reduce the overall incidence of insurance fraud through anti-fraud outreach to the public, private, and governmental sectors," close quote. The Fraud Division states further, it is charged with enforcing the provisions of the Insurance Frauds Prevention Act. Current law requires the Fraud Division to investigate various felony provisions of the penal and insurance codes. Most often, investigations conducted by the Fraud Division involve some aspect of a suspected fraudulent claim or related crimes. Cases investigated by the Fraud Division most often involve criminal acts involving automobile property and personal injury, workers' compensation, health insurance, and residential and commercial property crimes. Some examples of the type of insurance fraud that are investigated by a fraud division include staged automobile accidents, fraudulent health care billings excluding HMO and Medi-Cal and Medicaid, false and or inflated property loss claims, phony workers' compensation claims, fraudulent denial of workers' compensation benefits, arson for profit, fake life insurance claims, and workers' compensation premium fraud by employers. California and federal laws also permit the Fraud Division to pursue its cases federally. In those instances, the crime of insurance fraud is usually pursued as mail fraud, criminal racketeering, or other federal offenses. Unlike other police agencies, fraud divisions work with a single victim class, insurance companies. The fraud investigators working for the fraud divisions become extremely knowledgeable about the business of insurance, insurance claims, and insurance coverage, and apply that special knowledge to their investigations. In addition to their criminal investigation and prosecution duties, fraud division investigators must also supervise insurance industry fraud investigation efforts. In New Jersey, the mandate is described as follows, quote, "The Division of Anti-Fraud Compliance within the Department of Banking and Insurance focuses on two critical areas concerning insurance fraud. Its primary function is to ensure insurance agency compliance of those insurers writing health or private passenger automobile insurance in this state. This is achieved by adherence to the statutory and regulatory requirements set forth in statutes and regulations dealing with insurance fraud. There are two compliance sections in operation, which periodically monitor the functional units of the aforementioned carriers to assure compliance with their fraud prevention and detection plans. A fraud division will accomplish its assigned tasks with the assistance and cooperation of members of the insurance industry. When the investigation is completed, the fraud division will prepare a prosecution summary for submission to a prosecutor. The prosecution summary will inform the prosecutor of the following: the crime, the names, addresses, and telephone numbers of every person who can testify to any of the facts that establish the crime, the identification of all documents that need to be admitted into evidence, and a short narrative of the facts of the crime. The prosecutor will then review the prosecution summary and inform the fraud division investigator that an indictment will issue or that they will require additional investigation. Fraud division results across the U.S. are improving. Insurance fraud is estimated to take over $100 billion every year from the insurance buying public. Some estimates are as high as $300 billion a year. Nobody really knows because most insurance fraud attempts are successful. There are now 47 dedicated insurance fraud bureaus or divisions. Reports from the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud are encouraging, but are still an indication of a very small number of convictions, considering the bulk and extensive nature of insurance fraud in the United States. Another tool available to the insurance agency and the insurance industry is the Certified Fraud Examiner. This is a fraud-fighting professional and a member of the Association of Fraud Examiners, which is an international, more than 25,000 member professional organization dedicated to fighting fraud and white-collar crime. It was established in 1988 and is based in Austin, Texas. Association literature describes the role of the organization as dedicated to educating qualified individuals who become certified fraud examiners, who are trained in the highly specialized aspects of detecting, investigating, and deterring fraud and white-collar crime. Each member of the association, designated a CFE, has earned certification after an extensive application process. I am one, and have been for many years. Certified fraud examiners come from various professions, including auditors, accountants, fraud investigators, loss prevention specialists, attorneys, educators, and criminologists. CFEs gather evidence, take statements, write reports, and assist in investigating fraud in its varied forms. CFEs are employed by most major corporations and government agencies, and others provide consulting and investigative services. A CFE is called in to assist insurers faced with major insurance frauds or frauds that need the assistance of a specialized, highly professional investigator. The insurer, its SIU, its claims department, and the CFE work together as a team to defeat insurance fraud. And part of that team is often an expert attorney, so that when an insurer suspects fraud, it will usually ask an attorney to get involved. Attorneys who are retained in such situations are specialists who have either received specialized training or have sufficient experience concerning fraud and the evidence necessary to prove fraud to handle these cases. Many are CFEs, and all make it a practice to attend continuing education classes that relate to fraud issues. The role of the expert attorney varies depending on the type of claim where fraud is suspected. This video was adapted from my book, Zelma on Insurance Claims, Part 110, Second Edition, which is available as one of the 10-part treatise, Zelma on Insurance Claims, and is available as both Kindle book and as a paperback from Amazon.com. If you found this video to be interesting or useful to you or your colleagues, please pass it on. It's free. And please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, my Rumble channel, my blog, my Substack requirements, and you will learn of future videos and future blog postings. Thank you for your attention.